you're listening to She Shield, your one-stop pod for all topics personal safety. I'm your host, Sofia, and my goal is to help educate women and men on concealed carry, martial arts, and all topics self-defense. Really quick before we start today, if you all would take a moment to rate the podcast, that would help so much. I believe we have 52 ratings now on Spotify. It just helps get our name out there. So if you have 5 seconds, you can scroll to the top, click those stars, and add a genuine rating. That would help so much. This episode is brought to you by Big Tech's Ordnance, your soon-to-be favorite retailer for all of your firearms needs. BTO believes in only selling high-quality gear for responsibly armed citizens, as well as providing pre- and post-sale support. BTO values firearms training and supports firearms instructors nationwide. They even pay for their own staff to train with high-level instructors to ensure that when you as the consumer reach out, you are taken care of. This is part 2 of the Caleb Giddings interview. Today we are going to do a deeper dive into the topic of hunting and how that applies to self-defense and readiness. So if you have yet to listen to part 1, I highly recommend you head back, listen to part 1, and then come back with us. If you're here from part 1, welcome. Let's get into it. That actually brings me to my question, like, how do you get into this? Because I remember I was talking to Laura about shooting, because I didn't realize she does hunting as well. And I don't know, I was just thinking, like, how would someone even get started? Do you start with smaller game?
Well, it's funny because, for basically as long as we've had civilization here in the United States, your traditional vector into hunting was through a male figure in your life, whether it was a father, an uncle, or a grandfather. That was how people got into hunting, because it was something that they did with a paternal role model, right, in their life.
Yes.
And you see now with gun culture 2.0 that that's not the case of how people are getting introduced to guns anymore. People get introduced to guns through television, movies, stuff like that. And it may not be an introduction where you're like me. My dad taught me how to shoot. That's the traditional access route. But the good news is that there's a lot of like NSSF has a lot of good resources on it. NRA has a lot of good resources on it. And one of the neat things is there's a lot of places that can sort of ease you into the experience. So like, you can go, like, if you go, for example, and I'll use a personal example, you can go Google South Carolina boar hunting, right? So we have, wild pigs all over the damn place down here. And there's a place that's not too far from me where you book a reservation, you have a room, they assign you a guide. This guide, will take you out. You can either spot and stalk, which is where like you see the thing and then you like try to creep up on it, or you can sit in a blind and try to be stealthy and quiet and wait for it. And it costs a certain amount of money and all of that, but that's like that can kind of ease you into it. And then most states, you will go there, you have a Department of Natural Resources website for whatever state you live in. And that DNR website will have information about licenses that you need to get, public land areas that you can hunt, and all kinds of stuff. And so there's so many, it's just like getting into IDPA or USPSA. You have to be willing, like the information will not fall into your lap. Right. No one is going to walk up to you onto the street and say, "You there, you should be a USPSA shooter." You'd be like, "Get the fuck away from me, dude."
Right, yes.
And no one's going to do that for hunting, whether it's for, subsistence hunting or sport hunting or anything like that. But if you have an interest, if you're listening to this and you're like, I would like to get into hunting, I bet you $100 if you type in how to get into hunting into Google, you will get something pretty useful back. For me, I was not a hunter until I worked in the firearms industry. I didn't hunt before I started working in the firearms industry. And so every experience that I've had that you could term as hunting has largely been a function of my job. And so I've gotten to have some pretty amazing experiences, like prairie dog hunting in Wyoming, pheasant hunting in South Dakota, obviously axis deer hunting in Texas, and African game hunting. But this was, I think, part of why this stuck with me as such a transformative moment is because it was the first time where I had enough agency in what I was doing for the hunt to use it to test skills that I had built through my practical shooting training.
Okay.
Because in a lot of the other times that I've been hunting, it was like, here's, when I was on the media side of things, it would be like, hey, Smith & Wesson is bringing us to this prairie dog hunt. Here's the new rifle that Smith & Wesson is launching that we're going to hunt prairie dogs with, right? But this time, because I run marketing for Taurus USA, I was like, I have spent a good chunk of my life getting what I think to be fairly good at shooting a revolver in double action. I've done a ton of work with red dots on revolvers. I want to put that to the test in a way that is extremely difficult to test anywhere else. So, I wanted to take my Taurus Raging Hunter 44 Magnum with an aim point acro on it. And I wanted to shoot some stuff in Africa with it. And everyone on the internet was like, oh, well, when the shot gets really hard, you're going to cock it into single action. I fucking didn't. I did not fire a single round out of this gun single action the entire time I was there, and I only missed one shot.
Oh,
I took a 90-yard shot at a kudu that was, I think my hold was good. I think it was just standing in some brush, and the bullet probably deflected off something because I airballed it entirely, but also 90 yards with a handgun as a poke.
Yeah.
But no, and so I think if you want to apply this, like, let's take Johnny concealed carry, right? Well, you carry a Glock 19, not you. This guy carries a Glock 19. You can't really hunt with your Glock 19, but he wants to have that experience where he's using gear or something that he's familiar with. Well, you can get a 10 mil, and you can go do a boar hunt. You can do a boar handgun hunt with a 10 mil. If you want to find out what it feels like to look at something through the sights of your carry gun,
Right.
you carry a friggin' Glock 19 with a Trijicon SRO on it. Get a 10 mil Glock, put an SRO on it, and see what happens. You can have that experience. It's out there. You don't have to, again, you don't have to do it either. Like if me talking about trophy hunting, you're like, I don't know. I don't know about that. I'm like, that's fine. Don't do it. Go shoot matches. Matches are awesome. I spent 20 years shooting matches.
That's actually a really good point. I feel like if I killed something, I would want to harvest it to make me feel like a little better, because trophy hunters don't eat, right? They just
let's talk about that. So, and this isn't 100% true for all trophy hunting, but where I was in South Africa, I was in the Kalahari, and all of the animals that we shot went to feed. Not just like we ate some of them ourselves, because there's 8-9 people in camp, so we would have like some of the meat that we had shot would be cooked and served to us by the people running the camp, but we would also feed the camp employees. They freeze a lot of it. It becomes food for when the animals aren't easy to harvest and stuff like that. So in that environment, it's not going to waste. The meat is not going to waste in any way, shape, or form. We actually shot extra animals. We shot some females and some cull animals, which are a term for animals that aren't good for like trophies, specifically to provide extra meat for the camp, for its employees, for the people surrounding it, right?
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
That is one thing about it. But the other thing that people don't understand is also the economic benefit, right? We were in an extremely remote part of South Africa. It was a 9-hour drive from the airport to where we were, and most of it was on dog shit roads. And in that area, let's use a kudu as an example. Kudu is a great big antelope type looking thing. It looks like somebody crossed an antelope and a camel because it's got a hump. And it's got stripes too. They're super cool looking animals. So if a farmer sees a kudu, he's just going to shoot it, right? And he may eat it. He may just leave it to rot in his field. And you've seen that happen in some of like the national parks out there where they've just been poached into oblivion. There's no economic benefit for that, right? But now if, some American asshole like me flies in, pays money to the airlines, pays money to, to a hotel to stay for a night, all of a sudden, when that kudu has an economic value associated with it, it's not just me shooting the kudu. And even if I just shot it and took the horns, that's not going to waste because of all of the people who have jobs because that kudu got to get shot. And it's especially in a lot of these sub-Saharan African countries, hunting is the income from hunting is a serious part of their national income. It supports thousands of people's jobs, thousands of people's livelihoods are built around this industry down there. So if you suddenly turn all of that off, these animals are still going to get shot. They're just going to be shot by poachers, and people are going to lose their jobs. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things that for me, because I was, years ago, anti-trophy hunting. And I think I was anti-trophy hunting because it was such a cool opinion to have, right? It was like,
Right.
ooh, trophy hunting's bad. I would only
Right.
hunt to harvest meat, da 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 da. And it's because I was trying to impose, very, upper class Western sensibilities in countries and economies that I'd never even fucking been to, and I certainly didn't understand. And I'm not claiming to be some sort of like epic expert on the hunting economies of
Right.
sub-Saharan Africa or anything like that, but just being there and having that conversation with the people whose livelihoods it is, you're like, oh, okay, maybe I've not been thinking about this in the best way possible.
Absolutely. And first of all, thank you for sharing that perspective because I feel like you're a, you are a great spokesman on that from your experience. Would you say it helps I don't know if it's called genetic turnover. I don't know the actual term, but when like the older animals kind of it's okay to eliminate them so that
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, is it called what is it called?
I have
Is there a
no idea,
word?
but there is a
Okay.
science terms for it.
Ooh, let's just say it's called that. First of all, would you explain that, as someone who
Yeah,
understands that better, and would you say that applies to trophy hunting as well?
100%. So
Okay.
when you look at, we have in the United States, we're the apex predator, right? Like the only thing that really controls the white-tailed deer population in the United States are people hitting them with their fucking cars,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah,
but in
that's a good point.
hunting, um,
Right.
and you have to manage these populations, because if you let a population go unmanaged, you can have a deer, or in this case a kudu or an impala or something like that, that is a mature, it's a mature male animal. It has reproduced already. It's sort of like served its genetic purpose, and then if you let it hang out, it could actually reproduce with one of its own children. Like they don't care about that sort of stuff in the animal kingdom. And so it's good for genetic diversity. It's good for the overall health of the population as a whole, to harvest mature animals. And it's why we don't, generally speaking, harvest immature animals. We don't want to harvest, young bucks. We don't want to shoot, as many females as we shoot males. We want to try to keep that population managed so that we have a healthy, robust population, because a robust population, and this is not something that I just learned. This is like stuff I've known just from pro hunting talking points. But a robust population needs to have a little bit of pressure on it to be healthy and robust, right? You look at game populations where hunting is severely restricted or prohibited, and you end up with a lot more sick animals. You end up with a lot more disease and stuff like that, because you're not keeping the herd healthy. You're not keeping that population as vital as it needs to be. And the also, the counterpoint to the arguments about hunting being inhumane is that I guarantee that a 44 Magnum bullet through the lungs is a much cleaner way to die than starving to death because you broke your leg and you're eventually going to get torn apart by jackals. So, in terms of ways to go, all of the animals that I shot while I was in Africa died in a much better way than they would have if nature had just taken its course.
That makes so much sense. I just reminded me I was talking to an ex-boyfriend about hunting and I I was ready to die on the hill of like hunting is wrong and I had no knowledge of this side of the world. And I remember I was expecting him to be kind of mean about it, because
Mhm.
he loved to mansplain things. I'm talking like my own biochemistry research. He liked to re-explain to me. It was bizarre. Talk
That's
about,
terrible.
oh my God. So,
Well,
but
I can
he
see why he's an
actually,
ex-boyfriend.
oh, absolutely, absolutely. Um, so he actually stopped and was like, "Do you not know the benefits of hunting on our environment?" And I was like, "No." And he was like, "All right, well, let's talk." And it was like an actually great conversation, and it got me thinking. And like now, when I hear other people say it, I don't ever really teach them in that moment. I don't think I don't know enough to really go into detail, but I always encourage them to do a little bit of research on this topic.
Well, let's look at, a perfect example is of an out of balance population because hunting is restricted is look at the mountain lion population in California.
Oh, okay.
So it's largely illegal to hunt mountain lions in California. And the population it went through the initial phase where it benefited from that. So that the
Okay.
population, so like if you have like two of an animal left, you shouldn't hunt it, right? But once you get a decent sized population, if that animal is in an area where there is nothing that hunts it, then we are the apex predator. We're the population control method for that, right? Whether you believe in, a God that created us to be stewards of this universe, of this world, or you believe that evolution evolved us to be the smartest, most dangerous thing on this planet, you arrive at the same conclusion: is that we're the smartest, most dangerous thing on this planet. And I believe that I believe that we have a responsibility to care for that. And sometimes the ugly part of caring for that is killing things that need to be killed. And you look at, there's been more mountain lion attacks in California in the past 10 years than there were in like the previous 20 something years, right? And those are attacks on people, attacks on animals, attacks on livestock. And if you're a rancher in California, and there's a mountain lion that is killing your cattle, you're going to shoot that mountain lion and you're going to bury it in a ditch, right? And that's it. That's the end of that mountain lion. But what if it was legal to hunt that mountain lion? Well, now maybe some guy pays you 10 grand to come to your ranch and shoot that mountain lion and take its paws and its fangs and put them up on his wall or whatever. And now you've added an economic value to that animal that needed to die. So, and that's where I struggle. Like, I struggle with the argument of outlawing all hunting. Like, another great example is, I remember this. So, I was, my second wife was a horse girl. So many red flags: ginger, horse girl. I don't know what I was thinking, but anyway, and we had one of the biggest arguments that we had was, unrelated to some of the other stuff, but one of the biggest inconsequential arguments that we had was it was years ago. President Bush signed an executive order legalizing hunting in some of the wild horse herds in like Nevada and that region, right? And let me tell you, the horse girlies went fucking nuts. They're like, you can't hunt a horse. It's such a beautiful, majestic. Oh, and the American Mustang is a majestic animal. It is a majestic animal. We'd also hunted wolves basically to extinction, so there was nothing hunting them to control their populations. And the blowback from it was so bad that they eventually rescinded it. There were no hunts allowed, and the Bureau of Land Management ended up shooting horses from helicopters to control the population. And
Wow.
they don't talk about that last part. The anti-hunting activists don't talk about that last part because certain animals needed to die to control that, to keep the majestic Mustang herds friggin' healthy. And instead of those Mustangs, those horses dying and adding economic value to these regions, they just got shot out of helicopters, and left to rot in the sun or whatever they did with the corpses. So it's such a, I understand emotionally why people are opposed to stuff like that, right? Like when I was in Africa, I was sitting in a tree blind waiting for a warthog because I really wanted to shoot a warthog with a revolver, and a giraffe came out of the woods to drink at this watering hole, and I was 15 feet away from a wild giraffe. It was the tightest shit I have ever seen in my life. I couldn't shoot a giraffe. I realized in that moment, I can't shoot a giraffe. It's too cool it's like too majestic and just like it of an animal. And so
Yeah.
I understand that emotional argument, but at the same time, if there is a herd of giraffes and they need to have that population controlled, someone is capable of shooting a giraffe, although Lord knows how you'd mount it. Like, I would need a 3-story house to put the thing in there.
That's a good point. Yeah.
If you're ever in New York, go to the New York Natural History Museum
Okay.
in Manhattan and go to their African animals exhibit, because all of the animals were harvested on a safari in like the 1915s, and there is maybe 1930s, and there is a giraffe that is 2 stories. Like, they had to build the exhibit into the second story to make room for the giraffe. It's pretty cool.
It's
But yeah,
really
no.
cool.
So I don't know. I think that there's a ton of there's a lot of opinions, just like about gun control and self defense. There's a lot of opinions that come from a good place. I don't think no one wants to see animals suffer. No one wants to see, and because I want to walk this back for a second.
Sure.
I believe that most people who are anti-gun and most people who are anti-hunting are have arrived at these opinions from a place of genuine concern and good faith. All right. They have arrived at opinions that I disagree with, but I don't think they have arrived at them out of a place of malice or bad action. That doesn't mean I don't think that about all of them. I certainly
Right.
believe that there are people who are advocates for gun control and advocates for hunting out of malice, out of a desire to control other people's actions, but I'm largely unconcerned with the bad actors in those spaces. And I think that most people who are opposed to hunting or opposed to concealed carry or something like that are approaching the issue from a place where they have had these life experiences and been exposed to these information sources and then have made a choice based on their own ethics. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that, and what I hope to be able to do, as I grow older, as I continue in this career, is to be able to connect with those people from a place of, honesty and be like, hey, like, you're upset that I shot a zebra, and I understand that. I didn't just do it. I didn't do it just because I woke up one morning and decided I wanted to kill a zebra. But I also think, and to tie that around, I also think that we do ourselves a disservice when we sort of downplay the fun of things like that, because it is fun. At least it was fun for me. It may not be fun for you, but it was
Right.
fun. And I think if we're like, oh, it was this, and this is another beef I have with like a lot of the modern hunting cultures. They're like, oh, it's this sacred connection between you and the animal, and da 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 da. And I'm like, I I have shot things and not felt any sort of connection to them, and I've shot things and have felt a connection to them. Don't know if I would call it sacred, but I think that downplaying the fact that also it's fun and it's a unique challenge, it's an amazing experience, does us harm, because then we look, because if someone were to come to me and say, Caleb, why would you shoot, a kudu? It's a beautiful, majestic, or a wildebeest. Why would you shoot a wildebeest? It's a majestic, beautiful animal. How could you do that? And if my response was like, well, I just really wanted to experience the journey of that, and I, sold them some fluffy bullshit, and then they go on my Instagram page and see me being like, this was the tightest shit of my life.
Right.
It's not genuine. So you need to
Right.
be able to engage in a genuine way, I think.
Absolutely. So does part of you think these people are saying certain things to avoid scrutiny and that they're just
Absolutely.
yeah,
I think
okay.
that the people who are hunting advocates who only use the word harvesting instead of killing are very much saying that to avoid negative media attention or scrutiny from other people and stuff like that. And I think some of them are doing it out of a conscientious decision based on their own ethics, and I'm fine with that. And I think other people are doing it absolutely as a very self-aware ploy to gain more followers or to avoid negative attention. So yeah, I think that
Absolutely.
sort of cuts both ways. I will
Absolutely.
never say harvesting. I will definitely say killing or shooting or
Yeah.
whatever.
You could say killing and harvesting,
You
I guess,
can, you
if
can,
you
you
want the
can say
best of
killing and
both
harvesting.
worlds.
I have
Right.
like 30 pounds of axis meat thawing on my kitchen table right now that I'm going to
Ooh.
grind up into hamburgers to give away to relatives and cook this weekend and stuff
Oh,
like
that's
that. So
awesome.
yeah, the deer that I shot, I did bring all the meat back, and let me tell you, axis is the best tasting deer.
Is it?
Yeah, so I've been
I need
told,
to
and
try
I've
it
had a
again.
lot of venison, and I've had axis, and I'm like, this definitely tastes. It tastes closer to beef than any other
Huh.
deer that I've had.
That's interesting. The only deer I've ever had, I was maybe consuming alcohol on a float trip, and I should have just said a float trip because it's pretty freaking
Yeah,
obvious.
like
But
we were on a float trip. Oh, so you were drunk? Okay.
so you were drunk. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And one of the girls brought homemade, not jerky. It was like basically what are those, like basically a big cylindrical almost looking thing of meat.
Summer sausage.
Oh yeah, what is that? It's deer,
It's called
right?
it's called some. Well, I mean, it can be, yeah, but summer
Hers was
sausage is
deer.
Yeah,
But
that's very common in the Midwest.
I didn't know that. Right. I did not know that. So I was so hungry. And I was eating this block of Tillamook cheese. This is how I found out what Tillamook was. And block of summer sausage, like back to back. And like I remember the guys were like, Sophia, share. And I was like, no. Like I
Get away
liked
from
it so much. And then later I was like, dude, that beef was so good. And she was like, oh no, honey, that was deer. And I was like, because I was still on my like hunting is bad. And so I was like, how dare I? But it was actually so good. I need to try more things with it, but
it
yeah,
really
that's
well, and that's the thing too, is like getting to consume what if you are at all like a crunchy, and you care about where your food comes from and stuff like that, you should probably hunt.
yes.
Having eaten the deer that I've harvested compared to like a store, because like here's the thing, right? And we all know this, you know this, but like the cow that I buy from the grocery store was also killed at some point,
Right, absolutely. Yes.
So
Yes,
there's
100%.
but and actually, in going back to the Africa stuff, we ate a lot of the meat that we shot while we were down there. The best, and the one that was the most surprising to me, was the zebra. A zebra fillet is now my new favorite fillet.
Oh, that's
Like,
interesting. Okay,
it's
yeah.
so good. Like
Interesting.
it was better. I was sitting there in this camp eating it, and I'm thinking, if you served this to me in a restaurant and charged me $100 for it, I wouldn't bat an eye at
Right.
paying that. It was so delicious. It
Oh,
was
that's awesome.
tender. It was juicy. Yeah. So zebra, fantastic. Wonderful, wonderful eating. Um, yeah. We ate a lot of different stuff. We ate wildebeest, zebra, gemsbok. I don't think we ate any of the impala, but maybe we did. I don't remember. Buffalo, sable, warthog. They took the warthog and they made it was basically like a ham and cheese potato casserole out of the warthog that I shot, and it was
Oh,
so
wow.
fire. I was
That's
like the part of me that lived in the Midwest was just like, just dump
yeah,
this
for
straight into
sure.
my mouth.
That's so interesting. No, I'm definitely interested. And it's really cool. I love the people in this industry that are multifaceted like you and Lena. I know we've brought her up quite a bit. She's like started this new hunting thing. I think it's a brand she works with or something. I need to look at her content more closely, but like she recently got into hunting, and I'm starting to see that there are more people like this multifaceted trying to get into all parts of it. And it's just I feel like it just kind of happens by consequence of being in this industry. Um,
Well, I can tell you why I have taken a shine to it. Uh, I said before this trip before this trip that my only interest in hunting is executing complex marksmanship challenges in non-consensual environments, right? The other thing gets a vote. The shot is technically difficult. And that was true before this trip. Now there's something more to it to me, and I'm still kind of figuring that out, because I know that I don't want to get up in the morning and like I don't want to, wait and go be cold in December and sit in a deer stand. I have no desire to do that.
right.
But I do want to do more of this, and I do want to continue to do complex marksmanship challenges in non-consensual environments on, things like animals. But that was kind of how I sort of fell into it, because I I don't want to. It's hard to say this without sounding like I'm tooting my own horn, but I'll talk a little bit about my motivations, right? So, especially as a revolver shooter, I have a master class in ICOR in Classic Division, which is the type of gun that I shoot the most. Last year, I shot IDP World Championship. I was the most prepared I've ever been for that match. I finished fourth, and I had that moment where I realized that like the limb fact of whether or not I win the match was not my preparation or anything like that. There were other shooters that showed up and beat me, right? Like Lena doesn't expect to win every match she gets. Well, maybe she expects it, but you train for it. But
Right.
other people get a vote in whether or not you win or lose.
Yes.
And so I got a light pin from Gabe White shooting a wheel gun. I had really sort of, I know that if I want to go, make USPSA master or grandmaster in revolver, I can do that. I have the skill set to do that. I also know the amount of work that takes. And I'm not interested anymore in that kind of work. I don't want to dry fire every night for 20 minutes a night. I don't want to take all of my weekends to go shoot matches and things like that anymore. And it's not because I have lost my love or my passion for the sport. I still love the shooting sports, but I very much hit a point where the next thing is so prodigiously difficult to get to and requires such a tremendous investment of time and energy. There's other stuff I'd rather do. I'd rather go for bike rides. I'd rather watch Bluey with my son. But I'm still broken in that I'm not happy unless I'm finding a way to challenge my marksmanship skills. So hunting has given me that outlet, and because it's such a rush and because I'm such an idiot and I do it and I do, these great big ticket experiences, it gives me that ability to say, hey, I was actually able to test myself in this. And I feel a level of satisfaction about that I have to tell you, there was two of the shots that I made, I felt a level of satisfaction that was on par with anything I've experienced in a major match. Just the level of accomplishment and being like, holy shit, that was really cool. Like, yeah, on par with anything. The only shooting experience I have had that outstrips the feelings, the two of the hunts of the animals I took in Africa, the only feeling I have that's better than that was getting my fast coin from Ernest.
Yeah.
And let me think about that. Yeah, that's it. And that was because, like these animals, I had such an emotional investment in getting the fast coin. One of my best friends was there in the class with me watching it. Hang on. Some little known instructor named Tom Givens was also taking that class with me. So
Yep.
he saw me shooting, I don't know. You ever heard of Tom Givens again?
Yeah, I think I have. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
that was a very emotional moment for me.
Of course.
And then taking these animals was the closest I'd ever gotten to touching that again, in terms of a shooting accomplishment. So yeah, I don't know what I'll do next, but because I sort of fucked it up, right? Like I went to Africa like straight away instead of sitting in a deer stand. So I had this amazing
Instead of what?
instead of sitting in a deer stand, right? Most people's first hunting experience,
Oh.
and this wasn't my first hunting experience, but it wasn't also my 50th. So it was definitely did the really cool thing kind of early in the game.
Oh, that's tough.
It
Yeah.
is. Well, have I ever told you, like, I've only been skydiving once and I have no desire or need to ever do it again? I went skydiving one time. It was because I was afraid of it or anything like that. But I went with the Army's parachute demonstration team. So I did a jump with the Army Golden Knights, and these are the best skydivers in the world. So I was like, well, I don't want to go skydiving with the 24-year-old guy named Chaz who, smells like weed, and I'm not sure where he how he packed his parachute. I did it with the best in the fucking world.
Of course.
Box checked.
Yeah.
And,
oh wow, holy shit. That's so cool. Yeah, I wouldn't want to go with did you say Chad or Chaz?
I said Chaz specifically because of the conversation I had with other Caleb earlier. Chad is a good name. Chaz is not.
That's so funny. One of his best friends' names is Chaz, and
sorry.
Yeah,
sorry.
So no. I'm glad you finally said something I agree with when it comes to names. I'm just kidding. I like Chaz as a person, but yes, for those of you that are like, what the hell are you talking about? My husband is obsessed with the name Chad. His name is also Caleb. Anyway, moving on. There's some context.
Moving on. Yeah.
Moving on. Yes.
There's a lot there. Well, and I think the other fun thing about hunting is it gives you opportunities to do things, just like, and again, there's so many parallels to that in competition shooting, right? You could basically take everything I've said about hunting and apply it to competition shooting. It gives you opportunities to use your gear in environments that are very different than a static range. It gives you, there's pressure involved in it. And I'll tell two very specific Africa stories. So We'll talk about the wildebeest and the kudu.
Please do.
So the wildebeest, if you don't know what a wildebeest is, it's actually an antelope, but it looks like a buffalo. It looks like a miniature buffalo. All right. They weigh, if you've seen the original Lion King movie, the wildebeest were what trampled Mufasa. Okay. So, I had to get
Sorry.
one back for our boy. Um,
Absolutely.
so it looks like then in what I didn't know was that they actually call it the poor man's buffalo. What I
Huh.
didn't know is that they are notoriously tough animals. They are hard to kill. They tend to, and the owner of the farm that we were at told me after the fact that the wildebeest is the animal that hunters wound the most often and they don't recover because it is a notoriously tough thing. So I didn't know any of this going
Wow.
into it, right?
Yeah.
My professional hunter, CJ, he was my guide or my PH for this whole thing, asked me, what I wanted to shoot. And I was like, oh, I'd like to shoot a wildebeest. I think it'd be really cool to try to take one with, the 44 Magnum, the Taurus Raging Hunter. And what I didn't realize, because this was like our first full day there, was he kind of gave me a look at the time that after spending a week with him, I realized was, oh shit, okay, we're gonna fucking have to chase this wildebeest all over Hell's Half Acre because this fucking idiot wants to shoot one with a handgun.
Hmm.
So spot we spot a nice mature old bull, and we are like creeping up on him, right? So we're
Hmm.
crouch walking. Also, cardio. If you want to hunt in Africa, you should have cardio. Like you should have some good
Yeah.
cardio. I did a lot of cardio. So we're like creeping up on him, and CJ like we're there. We're behind a bush, and there's about a 60-yard opening where there's no cover in between us and where this wildebeest is standing by a bush as well. And he goes, "It's 66 yards. Can do you want to try it?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's go. Whatever." Okay. So he throws out a pair of shooting sticks because I'm not going to try to freehand a 66-yard shot.
Right.
So I drop this thing down and I put the dot right over where you want to shoot it, which is you want to shoot most four-legged animals. You want to shoot them basically in their shoulder because that gives the bullet, if they're broadside to you, that gives the bullet the optimum chance to go all the way through both lungs and the heart. And so he drops that in. I drop the gun on it. And one of the things that I talk about in my revolver class is pulling a double action trigger is like riding a bicycle, right? When you're riding a bike, you can pedal fast or you can pedal slow, but you don't start, stop, start, stop. So
Hmm.
I have the gun out and I just roll through the trigger. Once I start
Hmm.
applying pressure, I never stop. Gun goes off. I wasn't wearing hearing protection. A 44 Magnum without hearing protection is super fucking loud.
Yeah.
And the wildebeest kicks up, runs 10 yards, and flops over. I'm just dead. We came up, and it had. I thought I had the bullet around here somewhere. I saved the bullet, like specifically that I shot it with, because it came out. It went in right where I wanted it to, hit both lungs, the heart, and basically came to a stop on the other side of it. And like they just popped it right out, fully mushroomed, beautiful bullet. Looks like an ad for the bullet when we pulled it out of the animal. Um, and I was nervous when I went to take that shot, and I was nervous because I never shot anything with this gun beyond 35 yards. I knew
Wow.
the
Okay.
math of where to hold for bullet drop and all of that stuff, and da 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 da. But I'm like, this is a technically complex shot, and in hindsight, I'm really glad that CJ didn't tell me that a lot of people miss and a lot of people wound these animals because I wouldn't have taken the shot. I would have
Right.
been like, I don't want to look like an asshole. My pride would have gotten in the way. And I was like, I don't want to look like an asshole. So instead, I had this great opportunity. And, 66 yards, double action shot with a revolver was without a doubt one of the best shots I've made in my life. And then after the fact, everyone telling me, like, I can't believe you did that. That was the wildest shit I've ever seen. I'm like, oh, thanks. I feel good
That's
about
awesome.
myself.
Oh, absolutely.
Um, and that was really cool because I didn't know that was a really cool moment because I didn't have a lot invested in it, and my only real nerves came from knowing the technical complexity of what I was trying to do. Uh, then the kudu. So I'll tell you the story of the kudu, and this is the first time I've told this story in its entirety.
Okay.
I've got a written version of it, but the full story, well, it goes like this. So one of the animals I wanted to take was a warthog, and the easiest way to get a warthog was to set up on a watering hole, kind of wait for them to come in to drink, and work to get you have to sit. Like, I had gained a new respect for blind hunting because I had to sit and be quiet for 4 hours. That's like, and also kind of sit still, right? Like, you see how much I've been moving just on this
Right.
call,
Right.
I
Right.
just sit still and be quiet for 4 hours. I am terrible at that shit. So I'm set up on this watering hole, hoping for a warthog to come in, and I see this kudu, and he comes in, and he's a big old bull, but he's got one full horn on the right side of his head, and then his left horn, is snapped off about halfway down. And he looks super awesome. He's got scars on his face, and I'm like, that is the coolest looking thing I have ever seen, and I really want to shoot that animal, right? Like, I wanted to shoot that animal so bad, just in that moment, just from seeing him and seeing how cool he looked. And he came in with a couple of females and a couple of young males as well. So he had very clearly gone through that maturity cycle, right? He has, he's reproduced, he's done all of that. So we never see the warthog. I don't shoot the kudu that day. In my head, I name him Half Horn. And I asked CJ about it, and he's like, oh yeah, that guy's been around for a while. Last year, we saw him during season, and he wasn't with any females. So it looks like he drove a dominant male out and became the dominant male of that pack or herd or whatever you want to call it. And so in my head, I'm like, you're telling me this badass with one horn fought a bunch of other dudes so that he could become the dominant male? That's so cool, right?
Right.
So now there's like this connection, and I'm like, okay, so he's like an old warrior, like he's been around, and so all of that, like I got this investment into it. So then we're like, all right, we're going to get this guy. So we spend the next afternoon set up on that watering hole again where I saw him, hoping he'll come back in again. And he doesn't. And it was, that whole experience was super tense. I'm like, but he never shows up. So then the next morning, we start driving around. We're going to do spot and stock. So we're, looking for him. We see him a couple of times. We get out, we see him, we track him. I got within 70 yards of him with the handgun. And CJ was like, 70 yards, can you make this shot? I was like, I will make this shot. And we came out to try to take a poke at him. And the two females he was with were like, what's that? Spooked and ran off. And he ran off. And that was, I never even actually saw him. I was setting up to get into position to take the shot, and I just heard him crashing through the brush. And I was like, all right, fuck this guy. I'm going to go back to his watering hole. So the next morning, I go back to his watering hole, and I'm waiting there, and I'm by myself now. he was helping another one of our hunters. And so I'm by myself on this watering hole, alone with my thoughts in an audiobook. But, and he never shows up. And so I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to go, for lunch. And I, get out my radio to call CJ, and I see the truck coming down the road anyways. And I was like, oh, that's weird. I didn't even call him. And he hops out of the truck, and he's like, we saw him. One of the other hunting teams saw Half Horn. Get in the truck. We're going to go fucking get this guy. I was like, let's go.
That's
so
awesome.
We get in, we go to where he was last seen. We track him. We don't see him. All right, fine, cool. We go back to the camp, have a little bit of lunch, come out an hour later. We were driving. So how a lot of it works is you drive around and you're looking, and then once you spot him, you get off and you try to track him in on foot, right? So we're driving around. We see him again. And at this point, I've actually given up. So we see him again, and we are 90 yards away, and I take a poke at him with the revolver. All right. And I miss. 90-yard shot with a wheel gun. I just airballed it. Don't know what happened to that bullet. I was willing to take the chance on that shot. And and that's it. We don't see him again. And I give up and I say to myself, all right, if I see him again, I'm going to take him with the rifle, because I'd taken my rifle and I put a Leupold 3x15 scope on it, because I really wanted to complete this hunt. It was really important to me to actually finish this, finish what I'd started. And I decided that my desire to take him with the handgun was outstripped by my desire to be successful in the hunt. So I've got the rifle and all of that, and and I'm like, all right, if I see him again, we'll shoot him with the rifle. And we don't see him. And we're driving around, and it's like four in the afternoon, and I turn to CJ and I go, okay, I give up. Fuck this guy. Fun fact, kudu are called the ghost of Africa for a reason. They say, fuck this guy. If we see a cull gemsbok's a cool antelope with giant long horns, and we needed to shoot some cull animals for food. I'm like, if we see a cull gemsbok with that's a good trophy, we'll take that, right? And he's like, all right, cool. 10 minutes later, we're driving, and I'm kind of lost in my thoughts, and CJ goes, it's him, grab your rifle. And I grab the rifle, and we hop out, and I look, and he is 190 yards away, and I've got a 308 rifle, and I'm like, fuck you. And CJ goes, and CJ's like, can you make this shot? And it, just like with the Axis hunt, I don't say anything because my response is to press the trigger. And he takes off running. And I'm like, there's no way I missed. Every single part of that shot I called. By the way, the skills I've developed calling my shots in the shooting sports, very beneficial hunting.
Ooh, okay, that makes sense.
Because I called it. I was like, I know where my sight was when I pressed the trigger. So unless the bullet hit something that I couldn't see in between me and the target, I hit him.
Right.
We get to where I shot him, and there's a huge pile of blood. We tracked this blood trail for 1.5 miles because it was not a perfect shot. It wasn't as good as the shot on the wildebeest. The wildebeest was a legitimately perfect shot. This one hit him a little high. I took out the top of one of his lungs. He would have died. It was lethal, but these animals are incredibly tough. So we track him down, and in one of the funny moments, CJ had said, all right, if we see him, just light him up. Rounds on target anywhere, okay? And I got the sense that he was used to saying that to people who don't do competition shooting and don't necessarily have and I'm not saying I have super fast reflexes, but we had been tracking him for about 1 mile, and he popped out of the brush in front of us, and our tracker and CJ were in front of me, so I didn't have a clear shot. So before CJ could even say, that's him, shoot, I take 2 steps out to my left, take the safety off, and crack around. Because he said, if you see him, shoot him. And I was like, well, there he is. And I feel bad about this to this day, because a 308 going off next to your head without hearing protection is really loud. And
no.
I did to CJ. So I felt bad about the tinnitus that I gave him from that. But then the fucking chase was on. So CJ grabs his rifle. I've got my rifle. We sprint after this thing, and we split up, and we're keeping him in between us as he runs. We're running. He comes through a clearing. CJ slams on the brakes. I slam on the brakes. We both shoot at basically the same time. You heard one of the guys that was with us said, I heard a bam, bam. And because it was like just 2 sequence shots. We both fucking missed. We keep running. I load another round in. CJ loads another round in. I hear him shoot, and then the thing comes out, and it pauses and turns back and looks at me, and I drilled it right through the ribcage, and it just flopped. And CJ had hit it with his previous shot too, and we probably sprinted a good 200 meters. I was in full, all my gear, my rifle, I had my revolver on me, and I go, bam, he drops. I rack another round in, and I put the sight on him as he's going down and press the trigger, and it goes click. And in the dorkiest moment of my life, I go, I'm out! And I dump the mag, and then I realize my stupid ass left my spare mags back on the truck because I brought the revolver with me. So then I go to transition. So I go to put the rifle down and grab my revolver, it's fallen out of my chest bag while I've been chasing this thing. So I have an empty rifle and my backup gun is 50 yards behind me somewhere. But thankfully, that last round that I put into it was the finisher, and he expired on the spot. And we got up and we checked the animal, and it had, I mean, you could, where the first round had hit it, that 200-yard shot, it had been quartering away, and it had blown a chunk out of it that I could like put my finger in and be like, oh, that's where the top of his lung used to be. No wonder he ran for so long. Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, so if you're the sort of person who like, if you as a kid like liked biology and like cutting dead stuff up, you should go hunt, because you can like poke your fingers into tissue and stuff like that. But
I would have trouble with that personally.
That experience of 3 days of pursuing this animal to culminate in a run and gun shootout, I was honored to take that animal's life. Like, that felt special, and it felt special, and it felt dramatic, and it was the last day of the hunt. We were leaving Africa the next day, and I mean, if I was writing it as a story, I couldn't have scripted it any better than that, right? But it was such a powerful emotional experience. That was that moment where I was like, oh, this is what people are talking about when they talk about that connection to the animal, the connection to the game. And it was funny because my two most significant experiences there, one of them happened because I shot an animal that I had no emotional connection to whatsoever, and it was just a really tough shot. And the other one was because I had been playing cat and mouse with this friggin' kudu. Like, I had developed him into a whole character in my head, right? Like, Half Horn the kudu did not want to die, and he was not going to get got by me. And to bring that to a close was so rewarding. I can't really explain it to, like, people that have had that experience or an experience like it understand what I'm talking. Will understand it, and people who haven't would be like, "That sounds cool," and I'm like, "It was so fucking cool."
Right. Well, I'll let you know when I have an experience like it.
Yes.
I'll be like, now I know what you're talking about. Attention all knife enthusiasts. Today's episode is sponsored by the one and only Cold Steel Knives. For over 3 decades, Cold Steel has been leading the way in the knife industry, dedicated to creating the world's strongest and sharpest blades. They've pioneered countless innovations that have become industry hallmarks of quality and sophistication. From their revolutionary checked Kraton handles to the iconic Tonto point blade systems, Cold Steel's progressive accomplishments have set new standards in the field. Their trademark triad locking mechanism remains unrivaled by any of their competitors, proving its unbeatable performance time and time again. Their impressive lineup goes beyond just knives. They offer swords, tomahawks, machetes, cutlery, and a wide range of tools for everyday carry. Trusted by military, law enforcement, emergency services, self-defense professionals, and martial arts practitioners, Cold Steel is renowned for quality, strength, reliability, and dependability. Where strength, safety, and performance come together for over 3 decades and counting. Use code SHESHIELD20, that's SHESHIELD 20, again, SHESHIELD20 at checkout. I really am interested in this, and I have a few guy friends that are like, they're into small game hunting, and they're like, hey, let's start there. Just try this out.
That's a great place to start.
Yeah.
I think I shot squirrels, and like when I was a kid, I shot squirrels with a 22 because that's what you did, right?
Right.
And then there's a lot, and then you can do some other fun stuff like predator hunting, like coyote hunting is really fun. Because that is a battle of wits, because coyotes are sneaky and they're really, really smart, and they definitely don't want to get shot. But coyote hunting is a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed all the times I've gone coyote hunting. And yeah, I know it's the closest thing that I can describe that kudu hunt to is winning a match that you've prepared a ton for, like going into a match and knowing that not only did you, because I've won matches where like I didn't shoot my best, but like nobody good showed up, so I won. And a W is a W. I'm not going to fight it. I'm not going to complain about it.
Right.
But then I've also won matches where I shot my ass off and other dudes there were shooting their asses off. And that, it feels better. It just feels better. And that's what that kudu felt like. I was like, oh, this was really fucking cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So even though you've had this incredible just like 10 out of 10 experience, do you think you'll still do smaller game?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I still love stuff like coyote. I was looking at coyote hunt some places to try to call in some coyotes and shoot them with the revolver.
Ooh,
I want to do I want to do a South Carolina boar hunt because there's some really cool boar hunting down here. But
I want to join you.
yeah, absolutely, when I come back
Okay, really?
from this friggin' deployment,
Okay.
it'll be right around. Well, we'll probably want to wait till fall. I want to try turkey hunting because I've heard that turkey are actually incredibly difficult to hunt. And I'm like, how can a turkey be difficult to hunt? Like,
Right,
come
right,
on,
right,
it's the
right.
dumbest bird ever. But apparently they're quite difficult to hunt. I don't know. But,
Totally fair, totally fair.
and again, I'm never going to quit shooting matches. I'm never going to quit training to use a gun in a defensive environment. But I, you know, the fact that I also know that I can grab a double action revolver and make a 60 plus yard shot with it, I feel like I can also probably solve most marksmanship problems I get presented in a self defense environment. Probably.
Absolutely.
And I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I really am not.
Right.
But that's kind of back to the whole thing that I was talking about, right? Like this gives you that ability to be like, oh, I carry a Glock. Well, I got this 10 mil Glock. I'm 45 yards away in a blind from from this big pig. Can I actually make a, fatal shot on it with
Right.
this gun that's similar to what I carry? Because the Raging Hunter is exactly the same in every mechanic. It's bigger in terms of caliber and weight, but in every mechanical aspect, it's a double action trigger. You know,
Yeah.
my carry gun that I had on the bike today is a double action revolver with a red dot sight, and the gun I hunted with is a double action revolver with a red dot sight. So there is 100% that those two things translate to each other. But yeah, I think that was the first time I've told the full kudu story. To hopefully interested audience. Hopefully
Oh
your
my gosh.
followers will like this.
Absolutely. And kudos are beautiful. I
They are
was
super
Googling
cool.
images while you were talking, so we'll have to throw some up on the shorts on social media. But oh my gosh, I can't imagine seeing one that is aged and has one horn and that
When
you
they're
feel connected
enormous,
to, and then
they're
oh
like
my God.
600. They're like 600 pounds.
I'm looking at this picture. We'll throw it up on social of these hunters next to them, and I'm sure you and we'll throw your picture up.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
this one's a really good example of the scale. He's not joking. It's like what, like 3 times the size of a
Oh
human?
yeah. Well, and they get to like I said, they get to be it's like 600 to 800 pounds, like some crazy number. So yeah, and then wildebeest the one I shot was 600 pounds on the hoof. Um, Definitely the biggest things I ever shot because I'm not down poaching at the Walmart on the Rascal Scooter Lane. I guess it's the only place I could find something bigger. That was a mean joke. I feel bad about that. The
No,
minute it left
that's
my
okay.
mouth, I was
That is
like,
okay. I like it. No, this has been an incredible perspective to have. I've wanted this podcast. Of course, we have a rebrand coming soon, so I've been trying to
hmm
throw that in every episode to like prepare people. It's still going to be the same style of podcasting, but rebranded. All that to say, this is a topic that I've wanted on here for a while, and um, you're the first person for us to talk about it and be like, "Hey, we want hunting on the podcast," and then to be like, "Hey, let's get this actually aired." So
awesome. And
I feel this.
again, there's so many people who are more knowledgeable than I am on this, right? Like I am the areas that I'm comfortable talking about with this are how it relates to self defense, right? And again, that's limited to my experience. How it relates to me as a fairly well trained, experienced person versus how it relates to somebody who's not trained, who doesn't have experience. They may have a completely different view of it, a completely different experience with hunting, with killing, and all of that. So I don't ever want I don't I what I don't want people to think is that I went on a couple of cool hunts and now I think I'm some sort of great big hunting expert because I'm not. If you ask me questions about strategies and tactics for hunting, because that's a thing, if you ask me about gear selection and all of that, I can only speak to what I've used and what I liked, right? And again, for me, I can only speak really with any level of expertise to how this affects me and how I think it's beneficial for people who are interested in personal protection. Because I really do. I am 100% on board with the conviction that this is just as good for you for personal protection as competition shooting, but for completely different reasons. Almost some of the same ones too. The pressure is the pressure's there, but you don't get the benefits of gun handling like you do from competition shooting, because you can have pretty poor gun handling skills and be a successful hunter. You can't have poor shooting skills, but you can have pretty poor gun handling skills, fingers on triggers, not moving well with guns or anything like that, and be a successful hunter. But I think that for, a lot of the mindset stuff, a lot of the pressure stuff, it's just as good, just as beneficial as if not more for some people, because some people don't want to go shoot a match, and, it may be easier for them to find this. They may have a friend who has a farm and, hey, yeah, I'll come sit in a tree stand with you and we'll see what this is like. And there's also a lot of different options with this too. Just like with competition shooting, if you don't like USPSA, you can go shoot PRS, or you can go shoot shotgun. You can do all of that with hunting, right? Like I probably won't do much rifle hunting in the future. I'm probably not gonna, I love my Taurus Expedition. I've killed a bunch of stuff with that gun, and I have a connection with it. But the stuff that really gets me interested is handgun hunting and trying to get up close and creep up on them and take those really tough shots. So yeah, that's that's probably what I'm doing more of in the future.
I like it. Absolutely. And I personally did not feel like you were trying to come from a place of
I'm so smart
being an
about
expert.
hunting now.
No, you were sharing your experience, and that's what this podcast is for people to share their experiences, perspective, and for us to also just talk about things that don't get a lot of attention in the industry, like how our culture is changing and how social media is playing a big part in that, along with now how hunting applies to self-defense and perspectives that I would have never had before this. I also wouldn't even know where to look for this. So this is the first time this has been brought up to me, and now I have all these new questions that I'm going to go and try to answer now. So
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And again, this isn't a new thought to me. Jeff Cooper was talking about the benefits of hunting for successful people who are successfully going to defend themselves, back in the 1990s. But podcasts like this, forums, blogs, things like this are valuable because they keep that knowledge from getting lost, and the only reason I remember that is because I obsessively read Jeff Cooper's columns when I was growing up. Every episode of Guns and Ammo, I skip all of the reviews straight to the back page. What's Jeff Cooper talking about right now? So,
right.
It's, and preserving that knowledge, I think, is important. And I think that, as our gun culture becomes more urban and becomes less focused on hunting and more focused on personal protection, home protection, and stuff like that, the danger of losing some of this knowledge is significant, because, I worry about balkanization of the gun space. I worry about people who are, we all laugh about FUDs and all of that stuff, but I worry about people who are primarily interested in owning guns for personal protection, not wanting to talk to people who primarily own guns for hunting, because, I think that the guy who has, killed more animals than years he's been alive probably has some valid perspectives on what it feels like to kill something. And there's probably knowledge that can and should be shared across those, from that guy across to the guy who spent $40,000 on night vision and has taken every tactical carbine class in the world. Maybe I'm getting soft. I don't know, but I worry about people getting so trapped in their own lane. What's what we talked. Wait, were we live when we were talking about specialization, or was that before we started recording?
No, that was live.
Okay, perfect. But,
yeah.
I worry about that. And it is easier than ever, even in the firearm space, to only consume information that directly relates to the thing that you are primarily interested in, right? If all I ever wanted to learn about shooting was how to be a USPSA Grandmaster, I could do that. and I could never be exposed to any hunting content or self-defense content. I could curate my feed super tightly, and I don't think that's a good. I don't think it's healthy for people to do that. I think you should have other perspectives about the thing that you're doing, especially if it's I don't want to become a road racer, but I'm watching the Tour de France because these guys are the greatest bicycle riders in the world, and it's interesting. They're insane.
Yeah,
Insane. No,
absolutely.
there's a friggin' documentary on Netflix about the Tour de France. I had no idea how long it is. It's
Yeah.
20 days. It's the equivalent of running 2 marathons a day for a month. It's fucking bananas.
They don't ride constantly, right?
They will ride. No, they'll ride for like 6 hours a day,
Oh,
and
okay.
then do it again the next day with no. And there's 2 rest days in the whole thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's exclusively
Did
for
not
for
realize that.
insane people.
Yeah, that's
Like,
wild.
can you imagine operating at 80% of your VO2 max for 6 hours and
Nope,
then doing it again the next day?
absolutely not.
No,
Definitely
exclusively for
not.
insane people. I gained a, I, to the point about perspectives, I gained a tremendous amount of respect for them as athletes. I was like, because you never like, when you think of like elite performance athletes, let's be real, nobody thinks about cyclists except for cyclists.
Right. Absolutely. I've always wanted to do I've always wanted to volunteer myself as the average American for Olympic
Oh,
runners.
right.
Dude, right? Like just the lane with an average person running it. Like same gear, same everything, but just me. And or someone random. One way I recently discovered I can do this is by shooting a match with Mike Seeklander, for example. And I haven't done it yet. I haven't put our two videos back to back, but I recorded his what's it called? His runs for him, and then he recorded mine for me. And so I've been meaning to stack them with their respective times and scores just to show what that difference looks like. I forget I can do that in my own discipline. Of course, it's,
Mhm.
USPSA isn't my main discipline, but it's something I'm dabbling in. So, all that to say, yes, I have a great respect for that, just becoming someone who's training for the tactical games and like having to now measure my weight lifted. And did I tell you I was doing that, by the way?
Yeah, you mentioned it. I think you're a
Yeah,
crazy person because those
I am.
those events look nuts.
They look nuts. And no, I don't look anything like the typical tactical games competitor, but Lisa and I are going to actually Lawrence, South Carolina, September
Are you going to the
28th through
sawmill?
29th. To what?
The sawmill, is that where it's at?
I think so. That actually sounds really familiar.
When is it?
September 28th through 29th of this year.
I won't have left the country yet.
You want to go?
Well, no, I don't, because I'll be on Air Force orders. But if I'm free, I'll come down and watch you.
Ooh!
What if it's at the Sawmill Training Center, or wait, what city did you say it was in?
Oh my God, it is.
It's at the Sawmill.
Mm-hmm.
That's an hour from my house.
No shit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Ferry Road.
Yep. Oh yeah, yeah. I know where that is. Yeah, it's an hour from where I live.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'll
Here,
come.
I'm sending you the link.
If I can break away from work and I've got a free weekend, I will come down and to be very clear, because I'm going to get activated and I'll be gone for a lot. I'm prioritizing my weekends with family. But if I
Oh
can,
my God,
come
you
down and watch
absolutely
you guys
should do that.
compete, or after you
Take
compete,
them.
drive an hour back up to Greenville and we can all go out for dinner.
Ooh. So we're actually, funny story, we're driving from the Combatives Association Summit in Mississippi
Okay.
that Monday, like the Monday before, because Tactical Games is Saturday, Sunday.
Sure.
We're driving from Mississippi, so we plan to hit up, is it Charlotte? Or is it, what's the other SCS one?
Well, there's a bunch of them, because if you're coming from
South
Mississippi,
Carolina?
Charlotte is in North Carolina,
Ooh,
and you
so
would have
what's
to
the
drive
one in
past.
South Carolina? That's CH.
Crap. Charlestown.
Charleston. So Lisa
Yeah,
really wants to go there. So we're definitely going to Charleston.
it's a little
'Cause
bit
it's
out
also
of the
going to be a
way,
little,
but it'll work out.
is it?
Yeah, because
Well, what I'm
Charleston is on
saying
the
is like,
coast, and we're in the upstate.
so we could theoretically go Charleston. We could just go to you.
Yeah, you could come to me and then after the match go to Charleston. I mean, it's not that out of the way. It's like a 4 hour drive from here to Charleston.
Ooh, okay, cool. Well, I have a call with her today, so I'll let her know we talked about this.
You go. But yeah,
Um,
like no joke. If I'm around, I will definitely come watch you. I'll come cheer for you guys.
ooh, please do. We're gonna look so awesome.
I've
I'm
never,
trying to be positive.
I've never in my life been to a match not to shoot it.
This will be
That
fun.
that
Well,
buy
maybe you should join
that buy
in.
it. No, no, thank you.
Okay, so
And I'm not
funny
saying this.
story. No,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. I was
Oh
just
no,
gonna
so
say that
what? Mhm.
the team events, so people from like the elite winners can go and do team events with
Mm.
anyone they want to do that with. So we're competing against like everyone. That's going to be the funny part. But what were you saying?
No, and so yeah, I've made some jokes about tactical games and stuff like that, and they are
Yeah, sure.
just that jokes. But because I have an Air Force deployment coming up, I have no interest in the level of training necessary to prepare myself for the tactical games and the associated risk of injury. I
Totally
got,
fair.
I am still rehabbing an injury to my forearm
Ooh.
from before NRA. Like I am
Mm.
just now to the point where I don't have pain through this range of motion
Oh my
100% of the
goodness.
time. So,
Yeah.
you know,
No, definitely not worth it.
the risk of injury is significant, and
Yeah.
I will say this: I take care of myself. I don't eat super
Yeah.
great, but I don't eat a lot of garbage. The worst part about getting older, genuinely, is I don't heal as fast as I used to. Like it takes tweaked muscles, pain, stuff like that takes longer to get over. And the worst, and this is the one they don't tell you about getting older, is if you stop doing a thing even for like a week and then you start doing it again, you get sore just like you just started doing it. Like I didn't ride my bike for the week and a half that I was in Africa. And I came back, and the first day back, I was like, all right, I'm going to do like 12 miles, which isn't a long ride. And I was sore as shit. I was like, this is bull crap.
Hmm.
This is not, I didn't sign up for this.
Right. Absolutely. And it's not muscle atrophy, it's just
No.
oxygen diffusion
Yeah.
rates, things like
Yeah. It's
that.
just getting old as
Absolutely.
bullshit, is what it is. That's
Exactly. Yes.
Yes. Although, as my friend says, it beats the alternative, which is never getting any older. So,
Oh shit, that's a good point. That's a good
yep.
point.
But yeah, no, I would love to come.
Yeah.
I'd love to come down to Sawmill and watch you guys compete.
Please
And
do.
then if we can't make that work out, I like that we're just like planning future activities on the
Yeah, absolutely.
podcast.
On the podcast.
Whatever.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
who cares?
Absolutely.
Listen, if you guys who are listening to this had cool friends like Sophia, you would get to do fun stuff like this too. So
Yes. Hey, same with you. I've had some really fun experiences with you, and it's always great to see you at events. I'm finally to where I'm finding my people that I go look for at events. It's so nice because I remember the first shot show, I didn't know anyone. I
mhm.
was released and like basically clung to this one person that I knew, and then I got to a place where I was like, okay, I don't want to just hang out with her. I need to meet people, and I like detached myself, and then ended up finding great connections for 2023, and then 2024 shot show I found a little bit of my place more, but like 2025 I know exactly where I'm going now, and it's like feels good
Yeah,
just like
there's
knowing my people.
that is the benefit is there are certain people that when I see them at industry events, even if I only see them 2 or 3 times a year, it's like no time has passed in between the last time I've seen them. And once as a professional in this space, and there's a difference here. And to people who are listening, I'm not saying this to downplay being an enthusiast or an outsider or anything like that. But as a professional in this space, once you establish a sense of community and trust with a small group of people, it makes the rest of the trip so much more fun. I've been close friends with, there's, a few people in the industry that I've been close friends with for the better part of 15 years now. And, I don't even talk to them every day, but if I see them, it's like no time has passed. And that's what, a big part of what has made this so much fun, and why every time, every time I've thought about getting a real job, because this is not a real job. I got paid to go to Africa and shoot a wildebeest with a handgun. It's not a fucking real job.
I feel
Um,
that so hard. I feel
you know,
that
and
so hard.
and every time I have those moments where I'm like, I wouldn't miss the stress. I wouldn't miss working in a politically charged environment. I wouldn't miss any of these other things, but goddamn, I would miss these people.
Hmm?
And that would be,
Yes.
and you know, I was a few years ago. I transferred units in the Air Force, and pulling and disconnect. Like there are people in my old unit that I haven't spoken to since I left, and it's not because I don't like them. It's just because we disconnected that thread, and I don't want to disconnect the thread that I have to this community just yet. Maybe in another 10 years, but for now, I'm
Yeah.
having way too much fucking fun to quit.
Absolutely. I'm totally with you. I have this like random desire to go to law school. I don't know
Did you already
where.
not do med school to go
Yeah,
do
I
gun
went to med
stuff
school for a
though?
semester, then
So,
jumped out. Yeah. So trust me, I'm not getting back to any schooling unless I am 100% there. But my job doesn't feel real as well sometimes. And even my husband the other day got on the phone with a good friend, and the guy was asking my husband what I do for a living. And he kept saying, like, how does that work though? Like, what do
like,
you mean she does this?
yeah, how do you get
And
paid
he
for
texted
that?
him, yes, he texted him that night and was like, dude, I just want you to know, I didn't mean any offense to my questioning. I was just honestly shocked, because I was raised in the culture of like, get a 9 to 5 and that's a
Hmm.
real job. I had to show my dad my first like invoice from Meta when I told him I made money from a video that I spent 30 seconds making, got 1.2 million views, and I made $2,400 off of it in 2 months. And like,
Go.
and my dad was like, "That's not real," and I was like, "Dun dun dun,"
Here's
and,
here's the pay stub.
yes. And don't get me wrong, I can't monetize anymore, but like
No,
sometimes this line of work feels very
it does
unreal, and
feel pretended. That's okay. Like you know what?
it is okay.
We're I don't. There are I know that there are people in the firearms industry and in every enthusiast space that are there. I don't want to say in a cynical way. There are plenty of people in the gun industry where this is just a job, where it's just their 9 to 5, and whatever it is that they do is not. They don't do it because they're particularly passionate about the Second Amendment or hunting or personal protection or anything like that. They've just sort of ended up here, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that because the industry needs people like that to survive. The guys building guns in our factory in Bainbridge, some of them are passionate hunters, some of them are passionate shooters, and some of them are just paying their mortgage. So we need all kinds for that. And I think that if you are fortunate, like you or I, to get paid to do something that you are passionate about, you should probably lean into that. And I try to remember that, like, even when I have like really shitty days
Yes,
where all I do is like check emails and, argue with accounting about invoices for ads or something like that, where I do like normal job stuff, is that next week I'm going to go, shoot the Yankee Cup and get paid to do that. Or the week after that,
absolutely.
I'm going to go to SHOT Show and get to meet all of these, uh, yeah, all like all kinds of people. Uh, yeah, yeah. It's like I said, it's a crazy crazy ride.
Absolutely. Yep, I'm happy to be on it for sure. It took some fighting to get there because I had to. Leaving medical school was so hard.
I
I
have
fought
wanted to
myself
ask
so
you about
hard.
that. So, like, we started to talk about it when we were at NRA, but
Yeah.
you had to you had to abandon me to go off to a dinner.
Sorry, I
Um,
did.
well, we had started like two really interesting conversations. One of which I can't bring up on the podcast, but the other one was I had started to ask you about medical school and like did your family want to have you examined to see if you had like suffered a brain injury or something? When you're like, hey, I would have
For
quit medical
leaving?
school to
No.
work in the firearms industry.
So I'll give you the elevator pitch of it if you'd like to hear.
I would love to. Sell me this
Okay.
idea.
Okay, cool. So my dad is a triple boarded cardiologist,
Hmm.
internal medicine doctor, and sleep medicine doctor. So he's an MD, boarded, like I said, went to college at 15, medical school, college at 15, high school at 18. No, I'm sorry, excuse me. Medical school by 18. Sorry. He was
You're
just
just smart,
incredibly
smart.
intelligent. Like, yes, absolutely. So he does this. And by the time he had children, he wanted us to be on the same advanced track. And my mom was like, absolutely not. I want them to be normal socially because you're
So you
not.
became a
And,
violin player?
so they did other things like we were competitive violinists, competitive pianists.
Because that's
I did,
normal.
yeah, totally normal. And then we had like tutoring and, my dad's from Cuba. So we,
Yeah, I will pause you for a second. So,
yes,
as
tell me.
a fellow former gifted child, do you also struggle to do new things if you don't know you're going to be really good at them from the get go?
Yep.
It's such a pain in the
YouTubing is
ass.
the perfect example. I have so much trouble releasing videos because I'm like, it's not perfect and I'm not an expert in this matter. And like, I have to like send the video to people before to be like, is this stupid as shit or can I post it? And yes.
The no joke, one of the things that caused me legitimate anxiety when I was on this Africa hunt was I didn't want people to think I was bad at it. I'm
Oh
like,
yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
no, but I got to be good at this
Yeah,
because
but like I'm normally good at things.
yeah, I am good at, I am generically good at stuff. So yeah,
Yes.
okay, yeah, that's oh man, that's funny. Like when you're like
Oh, for sure.
competitive violinist, I was like, that's not a real thing.
It's a thing.
Oh, I know,
No,
I know.
absolutely. No, no, no. I know. Yeah, it's totally a joke. And they did all these things to make us incredibly bright in areas of our life to set us up for college. My dad wanted all of us to be physicians. I was the only one that followed suit. I was genuinely interested in biology, physiology, anatomy. That was always so interesting to me. I had trouble with the dissection part, ironically,
Hmm.
but in college, um, it's funny, my whole life, I have been trying to maintain what I love, which is self defense, training, you know, uh, encouragement, all of that, while trying to do what other people wanted. And the first time that happened was actually joining a sorority my freshman year. My sister and mom wanted so bad for me to have like a sisterhood. And all I wanted to do was fight Muay Thai and open my own dojo in Northwest Arkansas for the discipline I just got my black belt in at 18 called Musu Wan, and then have my instructor come up and do seminars. And I wanted to open up my own little training space while being a college student. And I instead put all of my time into being in a sorority. I quickly quit that like a year in so that I could pour all of that time into Brazilian Jiu Jitsu because I had found it, fell in love with it. And then meanwhile, every time I would call my dad and be like, Dad, I don't know if I want to do this. I love kinesiology. I'm sick of the biochem lab. I was doing skin cell regeneration research on E. coli for, it was a triple mutant thing, and I worked on it for 3 years, 15 hours a week. And so I did all of that. I worked in a jail. As a medical assistant, I worked in an urgent care clinic. I volunteered at the VA, I think something like 300 hours. I know it's a big difference, but I honestly cannot remember which one it was. Um, and I did everything I could to be this perfect applicant. I got in. And then the gap year I taught kickboxing. I got to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as much as I wanted to do. I got into shooting in that time. I started sharing my journey. I started the podcast with a friend of mine. All these things started taking off, all the things I really wanted to do. And then I went to medical school.
That's right.
And
Because when I
remember,
first discovered you, I think it still
yeah,
said med student in your bio.
yikes,
Yeah.
probably. Yeah, so
Uh,
I dropped out into a master's because I couldn't stand the idea of only having a bachelor's. I was like, no, I got no
I
way.
just before you finish, I was going to say before you finish that, I just got my bachelor's degree in May. So,
I
um,
It's
you know,
because I was
no,
slotted to be a physician.
I
So it's
know.
like the difference between a bachelor's and an MD. I was
Oh,
like, I can't do this. Like, I
yeah,
can't
it's
fall
like the
asleep
difference
at
between
night.
a GED and a bachelor's degree, basically.
Exactly.
So, which I also have
Yes.
a GED. Fun fact about that.
Amazing.
Um,
Hell yeah.
so, talk about like, so when I was 15, I took the GED because in California, if you went to get a job when you're in high school, you either need your parents to fill out a ton of paperwork
Mm.
and like get parental permission, or if you're a high school graduate, you can just do it. So I just took the GED at 15
Oh.
and legally graduated high school because, and it was, and I like this is me patting myself on the back. It wasn't even hard. Like I was like,
Ooh.
this is a high school graduate. Shit on my face. Yeah, so I
That's
do
awesome.
understand that that desire, and I do think it's funny that you're like, well, I'm just going to do something a little bit easier and go get my master's degree. Okay, chill out, smarty.
Yes. And I appreciate that. I actually, I don't, it's funny. Right now, I'm trying to locate my diploma. They sent it to my old apartment. It got rejected, so we don't even know it's floating around somewhere. But I didn't walk at graduation or even like tell my family I was graduating, and they all got like really mad at me because they were like, we wanted to celebrate. And I was moving at the time and getting married, so I was like, this isn't worth walking.
Yeah,
but
not that important.
because it didn't feel like it was an authentic reason to go into. I was personal training people at the time, so I really wanted a deeper foundation into physiology. So I did a master's in exercise science, and also just like use that as a little buffer period to be like, what the hell am I doing with my life?
Mm-hmm.
And it was around that time, I went to SHOT Show and met a bunch of people and got a lot of leads to like what I could do with my future. And then Live Fire was writing me around that time, and I interviewed with them and then just kind of ran from there. And they've been super supportive of all of my little side quests, my
your side quests. I love the side quests. That is kind of what they are a little bit.
Well, I'm glad we got to talk about our past a little bit. I don't typically go into too much detail there because I don't know how much people want to hear, but I'm glad that we got to have that conversation on the pod, and I've enjoyed this just overall so much. Caleb, thank you for your time, especially on your birthday. So for those of you listening interested in the highlights of this episode, of course, the entire episode is worth finishing. If you're here, you know that. Head over to She Shield on Instagram and TikTok. It is at She Shield Pod. Shorts are made by Lisa Hamilton. She's killing it. Definitely go check those out. All resources mentioned in this episode, along with where to find Caleb and information on specifically his posts to do with hunting that he shared recently on social, will be linked in the show notes. If you'd like to go check those out and see how big some of the animals are that he mentioned today, go do that. If you like the podcast, again, please rate it. It will help us get on the radar of other people that have yet to hear about it. And if you or anyone you know is a firearms owner experiencing a crisis, look into holdmyguns.org. They are an organization that will help you connect with a local gun shop or FFL to store your firearm for you. The link to access their website is below. Thank you for listening. In the meantime, stay safe and stay vigilant. Are you in search of top-notch gear that exceeds your expectations? Look no further than GPS, brought to you by Go Outdoors Incorporated. GPS has been dedicated to crafting the finest products for hunting and shooting since 2002. As someone who frequents the gun range, my GPS bag is a staple to safely and effectively haul my gear. My personal favorite is the GPS Tall Range Backpack, which makes walking USPSA stages simple and organized. Their specialized bags are designed to keep all of my valuable equipment secure and organized. With GPS, you can experience the ultimate peace of mind. There are 3 exciting product lines: GPS Tactical, GPS Wild About Hunting, and GPS Wild About Shooting provide the perfect solution for your specific needs. So whether you're on a hunting expedition or hitting the range, GPS is your reliable